We all know Howland Reed is good at keeping secrets. It's been 17 years since the Tower of Joy, and not a single soul found out the truth about Jon's parentage. But we saw that play out in Game of Thrones. There's a lot more to this character than just being Ned's confidant during the search for Lyanna Stark. Howland lived a pretty colourful life, and it's a shame the show didn't bother with his character aside from flashbacks, because he was alive and well in the present timeline, and could have added a lot to the story. They even had the perfect opportunity when his daughter, Meera Reed, left Bran's side to return home. Game of Thrones could have wrapped up her story arc in a bow, but decided otherwise. Meera is actually responsible for all this cool backstory I'm about to dive into during some of her dialogue in the third book. There's parts of this world that George Martin likes to keep shrouded in mystery to add to the more fantastical elements of his story, and one of these places is the Isle of Faces. This location isn't even far off in the middle of nowhere. It's actually right in the heart of the Seven Kingdoms. Yet so few bother to pay this mysterious place a visit or give it any attention, but Howland Reed did during his youth. The Reed family belonged to a unique race of people in the north called the Cronogmen. Instead of inhabiting a frozen landscape, these nobles rule over a swamp environment, and are sort of the gatekeepers between the north and the other Seven Kingdoms. They've done such a good job defending the north from invaders because of their difficult terrain as well as their mastery of swamp warfare. Okay, that's something I may have just made up. They face a fair bit of discrimination for their appearance and culture, especially by their neighbors to the south, the members of House Frey. When you think of Northerners, I'm sure most imagine tough, stoic mountain people with massive beards and muscles, but the Cronogmen couldn't be further from that. They're smaller than most in stature, and live a very different lifestyle. The swamp region of the north is called the Neck, and it lacks many resources or food sources, which means the Cronogmen are a poor group. They don't have fields of cattle or sheep, so resort to eating frogs, but more interestingly, their homes are built atop of small little bog islands, making them float around their waters. Even House Reed's castle, Greywater Watch, is atop of a floating island. Enemies can't find a target they can't track. Greywater never stays in one spot for too long. Along with being mocked for being small frog-eating mud people, the Cronogmen have to put up with being considered cowards. The truth is, they just figured out how to work with the hand they were dealt with. If their small bodies put them at a disadvantage, why not use your nimbleness to climb trees and attack from afar with poisoned weapons? It's also hinted that the Cronogmen may possibly descend from the Children of the Forest, crossbreeding with the First Men in ancient times. This would explain their height and deep connection to nature, but it's one of those things that's left for readers to decide. The children did occupy this region before being driven out thousands of years ago. It's their magic that caused the Neck to be half-drowned marshlands. It was a failed attempt at using water magic to separate the north from the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. Humans did enough damage to their sacred trees, so they saw segregation as the only solution to their war against the First Men. But the First Men, particularly the Cronogmen, began to grow close with the Children of the Forest, and soon a peace treaty would be signed that ended their war. The children would remain in the forests, while the First Men could occupy open lands. But most importantly, no more sacred weirwood trees were permitted to be cut down. The peace treaty is simply remembered as the Pact. The location for the Pact Agreement would take place in the middle of a lake in the Riverlands, called the God's Eye. The children carved faces on every weirwood on the island so their gods could witness the agreement, and the island has been called the Isle of Faces ever since. To ensure these trees would never be harmed, a sacred order was founded to watch over the carved weirwood trees, called the Green Men. What the First Men didn't know, or maybe didn't care about prior to the Pact, was the magical properties of these trees. It's the only known plant to live on forever if left undisturbed. That may be because some of the children eventually physically bond with the trees, becoming one, extending their lifetime drastically. The Order of the Green Men still exists in the current story, and Howland Reed wanted to learn everything he could from their ancient knowledge through the millennia. Though traveling outside the Neck is dangerous for a Cronogman, and something they rarely ever do, even one of high birth like Howland. This bigotry is just that bad in this primitive world. It's unsafe to travel through the Neck without truly knowing the terrain. One wrong step meant an early death, which made every inhabitant here not only a master hunter, but also a master guide. So if he could master navigating the Neck, Howland believed he could make it through the Riverlands, sail across the God's Eye, and onto the Isle of Faces in one piece. Meera Reed goes on to tell Bran the story about her father in the 24th chapter of A Storm of Swords. Once there was a curious lad who lived in the Neck. He was small like all Cronogmen, but brave and smart, and strong as well. He grew up hunting and fishing and climbing trees, and learned all the magics of my people. Bran was almost certain he had never heard this story. Did he have green dreams like Jojen? No, said Meera, but he could breathe mud and run on leaves, and change earth to water and water to earth, with no more than a whispering word. He could talk to trees and weave words, and make castles appear and disappear. After some interruptions by the younger and impatient Bran, she continued. The lad knew the magics of the Cronogs, she continued, but he wanted more. Our people seldom travel far from home, you know. We're a small folk, and our ways seem queer to some, so the big people do not always treat us kindly. But this lad was bolder than most, and one day when he had grown to manhood, he decided he would leave the Cronogs and visit the Isle of Faces. No one visits the Isle of Faces, objected Bran. That's where the green men live. It was the green men he meant to find, so he donned a shirt, sewn with bronze scales like mine, took up a leathern shield and a 3-pronged spear like mine, and paddled a little skin boat down the Green Fork. There's a lot to take in from this info dump here. Meera straight up mentions that her father knew magic, but her descriptions, like making castles move and changing the ground to water, sound like embellishments to me. While Howland may know some of the children's water magic to do these things, I think it's just Meera giving her father credit for the natural occurrences in a swamp. The bogs are light enough to move around and dissolve in water, or clump back together at times. But him knowing some magic is possible. Jojen proves this family is gifted. Did he meet the green men? Yes, said Meera, but that's another story, and not for me to tell. My prince asked for knights. Green men are good too. They are, she agreed, but said no more about them. Clearly Howland passed on the family tradition of secrecy to his daughter. She's willing to give up her life for Bran, but not share this information. But we do get some more info in the story, like Howland actually spending an entire winter with the Green Man on the Isle of Faces, a location no one can normally visit. And a winter in this world isn't just a few months, it could be years. Similar to the Cronog men, the Green Men recluse themselves from the outside world. They may do this to avoid attention from would-be conquerors trying to take this land and cut down their weirwoods. But they have shown themselves to be able to defend from invaders in the past, which led some characters to speculate the existence of children still on the island in secret. The Green Men themselves have rumors spread about them having dark green skin and antlers on their head, a tale even shared by Old Nan at Winterfell to the Stark kids. But they're likely just regular people in ceremonial garbs. But this creepy description definitely helps outsiders afraid of the unknown away. Occasionally, a curious enough young riverlord will take a boat to catch a peek, but every time the wind would rise up or a flock of ravens would drive them off. Sounds like the work of the children and their greenseers. But then why allow Howland to board the island if outsiders are shunned? Well, for one, he's a follower of the old gods, while most Riverlanders follow the faith of the Seven. I also think it's safe to assume the original Green Men were Cronog men, because of how close they were with the children. They were kind of the bridge between their race and the rest of the First Men. And if word got out that the Green Men were practicing magic on Westeros soil, the Maesters would be on their case immediately. The Archmaesters in the Citadel wouldn't sit quietly knowing the world they're trying to influence could be disrupted by powerful forces they didn't understand. While they may seem harmless and completely neutral politically, that's just a front they're keeping up. Maesters oppose magic for how destructive it can be, so continue spreading the narrative that the children are all gone, and that they were never really all that powerful. They even straight up deny the existence of other more magical beings. The Green Men would prefer to continue their work in silence, and Howland would not interfere since he is an ally. At the bare minimum, he learned whether or not the children still inhabit the Isle of Faces, and at most, mastered some, if not all, of their magic and knowledge. He only left the island to witness the greatest tourney in the story that was taking place on the shores of the God's Eye, just a short boat ride away. The tourney at Harrenhal is where he would be saved by Lyanna Stark after being attacked by 3 young squires for being a Cronog man. She then introduced him to Ned and the rest of her family, beginning a lifelong friendship. Howland didn't display any magical powers during his assault, but it's not like his life was in danger. There were just some jerk-off bullies pushing the small guy around. When his life was in danger a year or 2 later at the Tower of Joey, Ned does mention Howland saved his life. The 2 of them were the only ones to walk away from the battle against 3 of the Mad King's Kingsguard, and when they returned to their homes in the north, they never saw each other again, resorting to only sending each other letters back and forth. They knew it was best not to draw some suspicion about Jon. Both Ned and Howland have kept their mouths sealed, and I just hope we get more of Howland Reed in the coming books than what Game of Thrones gave us. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see y'all soon with something else to talk about.